Without a doubt, the number one deficiency in amateur golfers is their ability to control the low point of their swing. Specifically, I'm referring to the fact that they never get the bottom of their swing arc far enough forwards to allow them to make the perfect contact of ball first, ground second. And because of that, they hit too many shots where they hit the ground before the ball, thin the ball, or top the ball. Today's simple exercise will help you to eradicate those mishits forever and increase the quality of your ball striking like never before. Let's start by watching this short clip of Stack and Tilt's Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett discussing the importance of low point control.
Okay, so if you hit this ball, okay, where would the divot be?
Divot's going to be in front of the line.
Okay. And if you stood here all day and hit balls, how many times would the divot be behind that line?
Zero.
I want you to listen to that last part carefully one more time.
Divot's going to be in front of the line.
Okay. And if you stood here all day and hit balls, how many times would the divot be behind that line?
Zero.
And Andy says, if you hit this ball, where's the divot going to be? And Mike replies, in front of the line. And Andy says, if you stood here all day, how many times would the divot be behind the line? And Mike's answer was 0. This serves to highlight the fact that expert golfers control the low point of their swing almost perfectly. How many times do you ever see an expert player hit a poor shot from a strike point of view? Most of the time it's directional control or maybe distance control. But very seldom does an expert player ever top the ball or hit the ground behind the ball. In fact, when they do, it's so shocking that it's often used on a highlights reel of bloopers or bad shots. So controlling low point is the first fundamental to playing good golf. Now think about that question yourself. If you hit 10 balls, 20 balls in a row, how many times would your divot be behind the ball? How many times would you miss the ground altogether? How many times would you make good contact? 1 in 5, 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 20? If you're not paying attention to this skill, then there's no reason for it to improve. And if you don't improve this skill, you're not going to improve your skill as a golfer. So before I show you how to practice this, a very quick explanation on the pieces that control low point. What are the factors here that we're trying to influence that control where this club bottoms out and where it hits the ground? The first thing to discuss would be the location of your weight. So simply put, if I wanted to hit the ground the furthest back and behind the ball, I would move my weight the most behind the ball like so. That would help me to hit the ground behind the ball. Not functional for good golf, but that's what I would choose to do. And equally, if I wanted to hit the ground extremely forwards, I would move my weight more towards the target. Again, this would be extreme. It's just making the point that good golfers and golfers who are able to control their low point have more weight on their front foot when they hit the ball than they do on their back foot. And that's a very, very regular and common mistake that I see in amateur golfers, trying to lift the ball up in the air, too much weight on their back foot, either trying to lift the ball or they've been told they need to put the weight behind the ball to try and create some power. All of this is causing the issue. So number one, where's the weight? The drill I'm going to share with you is going to deal with that piece. It's going to make sure you have enough weight forward at impact. The second factor that controls where the club hits the ground is how you control the radius of the swing. The radius being this lead arm and shaft that form a line. And when we set up at impact, we generally set up with a little bit of shaft lean. And the poorest golfers, when they hit the ball, will have had the club and the lead arm line up before the club reaches the golf ball. And at impact, they'll have something that looks like this. So you see how my lead arm, represented by the yellow stick, the club shaft is already past that point. Conversely, in the best players, they'll manage this radius of the arm and the shaft by actually keeping the shaft behind the lead arm all the way up and into impact. So when you hit the ball, you'll notice the best players have their hands ahead of the golf ball. I've talked about that in previous videos where we discuss the wrist angles and how to control that. But suffice to say that controlling the radius, how you manage the handle and the shaft here, is the second factor. And once again, the drill that I'm going to share with you today takes care of that piece as well. And the third factor that controls the low point, which doesn't get as much discussion generally as the first two, would be the direction of your swing. So I can swing as a right-handed golfer, I can swing to the right, which would be often described as more in to out. And the more I swing and shift my swing direction to the right, the more likely I am to hit the ground behind the ball. The more I shift my swing to the right, the further back my low point would move. And conversely, the more out to in or left that I swing as a right-handed golfer, the more forward on the ground my low point could be. And I think when you think about that and connect the dots, it's very often the case that the poorest golfers have the most out to in swing path. And typically one of the biggest reasons for that is because they have their weight too far back throughout the swing. And one of the ways that they can artificially move the low point more forwards with their weight being too far back is to swing out to in. So my low point should be back behind the ball here, but by swinging excessively across the ball, I'm able to make some sort of functional contact with the ground. But of course, as I swing that much across the golf ball, I'm losing power, I'm introducing directional control issues, particularly slicing the ball. So that's the third piece. Swing direction, out to in or in to out, will affect where your club hits the ground. So to train the skill of improved low point control, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our 7-iron. You can do this with a wedge. You can do this with any club from the ground. And we're going to take our regular ball position, and I'm going to move that ball 3 to 4, even 5 balls further forward in my stance. So now I've got this thing more or less off of my left toe, my front foot. It could even go a little further than that. Okay, so I've got this ball super forward in my stance. I'm going to ask you to start hitting shots with the golf ball in this position. What is that going to do? Well, in order for you to make good contact, I promise you, you're going to need to start shifting your weight forward, whether that be keeping it more forward in the backswing, so you've got more chance of reaching it in the downstroke, or whether that's an improved shift towards the ball in the downswing brought on by a better intention of getting forward to reach this ball. If you don't move forwards enough, or if you end up with your weight too far back, there's no way you can reach that ball. You're going to smash the club into the ground before the ball. So that putting the ball forward starts to train the necessary weight shift, encourage the exaggeration that we want to get from this drill, that you're far enough forward to hit that ball first, not the ground. And secondly, for those of you that struggle with the uncocking of the wrists or the casting or flipping of the club, again, if the ball's this far forward, you've got to hold on to these wrist angles for longer. If you don't, you're going to start to uncock this club, dump the club into the ground prematurely, and once again, hit the ground before the ball. So the mistake here would be, the feedback of the mistake would be hitting the mat or hitting the ground too far forwards. Success with this drill would be being far enough forward with your weight and maintaining the shaft angle here far enough forward that you're able to hit the ball first, not the ground. Here's what one would look like. We're going to take our normal setup. We're not going to exaggerate our weight at setup at all. We're just going to address where the golf ball would be in our normal stance. So that's more or less in the center of the stance here. And now I've got the ball some 5 to 6 inches forwards of where it would usually be. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit one. That was really nicely struck. That ball's gone dead straight, right out the center of the club face. Managed to get close to 160 yards out of that 7-iron, and I wasn't trying to crush it, I was just trying to make good contact. I still managed to maintain a downward angle of attack, meaning I got far enough forwards to hit that ball first and the ground second. The quality of that contact there was absolutely perfect. The one thing that did change slightly for me, my swing path. So if you think about this and you visualize and understand the grid lines on the ground here, the further forwards I put the ball, the more likely I'm going to be to swing slightly more out to in to meet this ball. Your job is to hit the ball first and the ground second without swinging excessively out to in. And I'm going to share with you how to avoid that final piece in just a second. That swing path was 1 degree out to in, which is pretty much dead straight. So straight swing direction whilst managing the low point control is exactly what we're after here. Once again, set up to the ball where it would be in your stance. Let's move it 5 or 6 inches forwards, opposite your front foot, and we'll go ahead and hit one more. Another really nice strike. I closed the face a little bit more on that one. The ball pulled slightly more to the left there, but once again I made the necessary contact. The path once again was 1 degree out to in. the angle of attack was still down. So that's telling me that I'm getting far enough forward with this lead shoulder. That's a conversation we had in the last couple of weeks on the down and forward video that you can watch. We're getting the lead shoulder far enough forward. I'm keeping the hands sufficiently forward to get some shaft lean. And from this angle, I'm not swiping across the ball excessively in order to reach that forward ball position. One addition that you can make to this drill, which starts to just take care of the final piece, the swing direction part, would be to place something soft like a pool noodle here just outside the ball. You could use a head cover. If you didn't have access to one of these, you could put your head cover on the ground, just lay it on the ground just outside the ball, and then moving that ball position to its more forward position, this extreme position for this drill. I've now got that ball 4, 5, 6 balls further forward than it would normally be. I've got the noodle here, which is going to ensure that I still conform to a reasonably straight swing direction. It's not going to allow me to come over the top to find the ball. If I chose that route to get to the ball, I'm going to make contact with the noodle. So we now know that we're going to get far enough forwards, keep the shaft lean, and avoid our soft feedback on the ground here that we don't want to hit that. If we conform to ball first and we miss the noodle, we're doing all of the right pieces to try and encourage better low point control. Probably the best one of the three. Right out the center, dead straight, no contact with the noodle at all. Hit right in the center of the club face, and my club path on that one was 0.2 degrees in to out. It was perfectly straight swing, but I managed to get far enough forwards to control the low point and hit the ball first and the ground second. That's the contact that you're experiencing when you hit that one good shot that comes right out the middle of the club face. And that's what the best players are doing all of the time. One of the most effective ways to train this skill is with some feedback. Those of you that spend any time on this channel will know that I am a big fan of practicing with some sort of feedback. Otherwise, how do you really know if you're getting better or not? And when you're practicing at a driving range, it can be incredibly difficult to know whether you've hit the ground first or the ball first. It doesn't always give you that feedback that hitting from the grass would do. This training aid right here is called the Divot Board. It's something I've featured on the channel in previous months. I've done videos on it before. It's one of my favorite training aids as far as helping you to identify where your club is hitting the ground. Strike the mat and you'll get the feedback and of the mat changing color. I'm going to demonstrate how you can use this. I know many of you have already purchased one of these and are using it in your practice. This is a great tool to add to that drill that I've just shown you. So the standard format here for the divot board would be to put the divot board and the golf ball in the center of the divot board in its regular ball position. Okay, but what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pick up the divot board and move it forward on the mat so that the golf ball that's represented on the divot board is in that extremely forward position. So this would be where my club is right now. This would be regular ball position, and I've moved the divot board now so that the yellow ball represented on the divot board surface is into that 5 or 6 ball forward position opposite my front foot. My favorite way to use the divot board is actually to begin with without the ball on it. Just use the mat for the feedback of where the club is striking the ground. So if we go back and we're going to make a swing towards the divot board, we're looking to have that weight far enough forwards to be able to reach the bottom of the arc here. The goal is to strike the mat where the ball, the yellow ball, is located here on the divot board. We want to have the weight far enough forward, we want to have the hands ahead of the golf ball, and we're controlling that swing direction if we continue to use the noodle, which I spoke about earlier. So let's go ahead and try this. You see there how I've struck the mat quite a long way forward of that ball, and that is the purpose of this exercise. As Mike Bennett said, remember how many times he would hit behind the line. If he stood there all day and hit balls, how many times would he hit behind the line?
0.
So let's keep going with this exercise. Try and hit the mat forward. You'll notice there that that was slightly further back. Once you've hit a couple of shots here, you can just brush the divot board back in the opposite direction and change the color of the board back to its neutral setup. Once again, get forward. That was a better one. See how the contact with the mat happened right where this ball is, and then the divot happens after the ball. That's the goal. The feedback you get from this is extremely powerful. I've used this with many students over the months and years that I've been involved with divot board. One of the biggest things that still surprises people is how bad they are at controlling the low point of their swing. The inability to control where their club hits the ground is a huge deficiency in most people's golf, and that likely includes you. So if you're not testing and you're not training for this skill, then you're really not trying to make yourself a better golfer. Good low point control is fundamental to good golf. If you practice this skill, your ball striking and your game will undoubtedly improve. So there you have a very simple but very effective way to train low point control. Remember, this is one of, if not the most basic skill you need to develop, whether you're a new golfer learning the game or whether you're a more established player who's been playing for a long time and is suffering with that inconsistency. I'm going to continue to keep making videos on low point control while you keep watching, because I promise you this skill is super underdeveloped by the vast majority of you, and it'll be in your interest to practice this skill specifically. And to genuinely improve, you need feedback. So if you're interested in picking up one of the divot boards for yourself, I'm going to put the link down in the description below. This is an excellent product that you can use indoors and outdoors, both with and without the golf ball. I highly recommend it if you're looking to improve this skill. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please do go ahead and hit that like button. It does help to get the video shared and seen by more people. And if it's your first time here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It'd be great to have you as part of the community. And those of you interested in developing this skill to the best of your ability should go and watch this video next. Can you hit the ball first and take a divot second? That's the question. And I'm going to demonstrate the Mike Bennett stack and tilt drill in this video and show you how important it is to control that low point.